It started with shouting. I was 2 houses down when I heard the commotion, an officer's voice barking something sharp and aggressive, cutting through the still afternoon like a buzzsaw. I slowed my walk. It was coming from Ms. Eloise's porch. Ms. Eloise was a pillar of the neighborhood. 82 years old, sharp as a tack, and as dignified as any judge I'd ever seen. Always wore a pressed dress, hair pinned neat, and eyes that saw right through nonsense. She was the kind of person even the local teens called ma'am. So when I saw the deputy, young guy, fresh face, full of misplaced confidence, standing on her steps, chest puffed and voice raised, it didn't sit right. You need to come with me now, the officer snapped, hand twitching near his belt. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Ms. Eloise remained seated in her rocking chair. Calm. Unshaken. Her hands rested gently on the arms, and her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft but deliberate. I'm not going anywhere, officer. He didn't like that. Took a step forward. I don't care who you are. I gave you a lawful order. Still, she didn't flinch. She simply looked up at him with that quiet strength. Sir, she said, her tone steady. Do you even know who I am? He scoffed. All I know is you're obstructing an investigation. She tilted her head slightly. Then maybe you should call your supervisor. He crossed his arms, clearly trying to assert control. Lady, you're one word away from being detained. Don't test me. Then she said it. 5 words. Calm, clear, and measured. I trained your police chief. The silence was instant. The deputy froze, mid-breath. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. From where I stood on the sidewalk, I could see his posture change. Shoulders dropped. His eyes blinked once, processing. Ms. Eloise leaned forward just a bit, her eyes locked on his. You want to keep raising your voice? She asked. Or would you like to hear how I built this department from the ground up in the 70s? The kid looked like he wanted to vanish. The deputy took a small step back. His mouth moved, like he was trying to form a response, but his brain hadn't caught up to his body yet. Ms. Eloise didn't move from her rocking chair. She simply looked at him, head slightly tilted, as if waiting for a student to remember their lesson. I edged a little closer down the sidewalk, not wanting to interrupt but needing to see this through. A few neighbors had come out too, quiet, watching. You trained, the chief, the deputy finally asked, his voice several notches softer. I did, she said. When he was a rookie. Same age as you. Same attitude too. Her words weren't angry. She wasn't lashing out. She was teaching. And every syllable carried more weight than his badge. I was on the community oversight board, she continued. I helped draft your current de-escalation policy. I sat on the oral board that interviewed your current command staff. Your chief used to sit on that very step, notebook in hand, taking notes on what accountability means. He glanced at his body camera like it might save him. But you didn't ask for my name, she said. You didn't ask what I saw. You came in shouting. His jaw clenched. I was told there was a report of a suspicious person, she finished. On my own porch. Wearing my own slippers. Drinking my own tea. Silence again. The officer looked down. The confidence was gone now, replaced with something heavier, recognition. Embarrassment. Ma'am. I'm sorry, he said. But she held up a hand. No. You don't get to apologize until you understand what you almost did. He swallowed hard. The deputy shifted awkwardly on the wooden steps. His boots creaked against the old planks. For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic creak of Ms. Eloise's rocking chair and a bird chirping somewhere up in the trees. She finally broke the silence. Young man, let me ask you something, she said, her eyes never leaving his. When you put on that uniform this morning, what was your purpose? He hesitated. To protect and serve, ma'am. Good, she nodded. Now tell me, who were you protecting just now? Who were you serving? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Exactly, she said. You were serving your own fear. And you were protecting your authority. Not this neighborhood. A small crowd had gathered by now, just a few people at the edge of the yard, silent but attentive. No one pulled out phones. No one needed to. The real power of the moment didn't need to be recorded to be remembered. She rocked back, let out a breath, and folded her hands in her lap. I worked for decades to make sure this community was treated with dignity, she said. I trained officers not just to follow policy, but to understand the people they were sworn to protect. We fought to earn trust. And in 60 seconds, you nearly unraveled that work with your tone alone. The deputy looked down at his badge. I didn't mean any disrespect, he said quietly. I know you didn't mean to, she replied. But intentions don't excuse actions. That's the difference between a badge and a leader. You want to be a leader? Then you listen before you assume. You learn before you command. He nodded slowly. Then, with a level of humility that surprised me, he said, what would you do if you were me right now? Ms. Eloise raised an eyebrow. I'd start with taking a seat and hearing the full story before making any more noise. Without hesitation, he stepped off the porch, pulled a small notebook from his vest, and sat down on the top step. I'm listening, he said. And she began to speak. Ms. Eloise looked at the young officer now seated on her steps, no longer towering over her, no longer barking orders. Just listening. It was a start. She took a slow sip of her tea, then placed the cup gently on the side table. I've lived in this house for over 40 years, she began. Raised 2 children, buried a husband, and watched this street grow from dirt to pavement. I've seen every officer that's come and gone. Some made it a year. Some made it a legacy. He jotted something down quietly, respectful. That call you got? The suspicious person report. That came from someone new to the neighborhood. They didn't recognize me sitting on this porch, so they called you instead of saying hello. His face tightened. And instead of asking for a name, you came to confront, she said, not unkindly, just truthfully. That's how trust gets broken, fast, loud, and without thought. He looked up. I'm still learning. She smiled faintly. Then learn well. Because one day, you'll wear stripes. You might even be chief. But if you don't learn how to approach with respect, those stripes won't mean a thing to the people who live here. The deputy nodded. You're right. I know I am, she said, and for the first time, her voice softened. And I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying it because I see potential. But potential without wisdom is dangerous. He sat up straighter. So, she said, you want to rebuild what you almost damaged? Yes, ma'am. Then come back here tomorrow, she said, without a badge, just a notepad and an open mind. I'll tell you everything this neighborhood has taught me. He blinked. You do that? I don't hold grudges, she said. But I do hold people accountable. If you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach. The officer stood up slowly, respect in his posture now. I'll be here, he said. Thank you for not throwing me off this porch. She chuckled. I considered it. But then I remembered, every strong tree started out as a sapling. He offered a quiet nod and walked back toward his patrol car, glancing once more at the woman who had just humbled him with 5 words and a lifetime of wisdom. The next day, just as promised, the deputy came back. No patrol car. No uniform. Just a plain shirt, jeans, and a small notepad tucked under his arm. He looked unsure as he approached the porch, like a student returning for a second chance at a test he barely understood the first time. Ms. Eloise was already there, same rocking chair, same pressed dress, same calm expression. "You're on time," she said, offering a nod of approval. I figured it was the least I could do. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Then let's begin." He sat quietly, flipping open his notebook. And for the next hour, she talked. She told him about the block, who lived where, which kids needed looking after, which elders were too proud to ask for help. She explained the invisible threads that held the community together, the ones you don't see in reports or databases. The kind that break when handled without care. She spoke of past officers who earned respect not with volume, but with consistency. Officers who walked the block, learned names, remembered birthdays. He wrote furiously, occasionally stopping to ask questions, not about policies, but about people. How do you know when someone needs help but won't say it? How do you handle someone who yells because they're scared, not angry? What's the difference between presence and pressure? She answered them all with stories, not lectures. He listened, nodding, absorbing. By the time the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the wooden porch, something had changed, not just in him, but in the air between them. As he stood to leave, he looked at her and said, "Thank you. For everything. Yesterday could have gone very differently." Ms. Eloise smiled. "It still did. You showed up again. That's where real change starts." He extended his hand. She shook it. And just like that, the loudest moment of their encounter, the one people would talk about, wasn't the yelling or the silence that followed. It was the quiet understanding that grew when someone truly listened. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, not about the yelling, but about the lesson. By the end of the week, 3 more officers came by Ms. Eloise's porch, quietly, respectfully. One brought a notebook. Another brought homemade banana bread as a peace offering. The third just came to listen. And she welcomed each one the same way, with a chair, a story, and the expectation that if they wore the badge, they'd better know how to carry its weight. The young deputy, his name was Cole, kept coming back, too. Sometimes after shift, sometimes on his day off. He learned about the people behind the doors on his beat. Not just names, but needs. Fears. Hopes. It didn't take long before the way he patrolled changed. He waved more. Walked more. Talked more. People began to notice. "Feels like the old days," one neighbor said. "Feels like someone actually sees us," said another. And Ms. Eloise? She just kept rocking on that porch. Not looking for credit. Just watching the seeds she planted begin to grow. It started with 5 words. It became something much bigger. Because sometimes, the most powerful authority doesn't come from a badge, it comes from wisdom earned, respect given, and the courage to teach. Months passed. The leaves began to turn, the air crisp with the promise of fall. Porch visits became less frequent, but the impact remained. Officer Cole had changed, not just how he worked, but who he was. He led with patience. Asked questions. Listened more than he spoke. The department noticed. His name came up for a community liaison role. And when asked what inspired his shift in approach, he didn't hesitate. "Eloise Morgan," he said. "She taught me what the academy couldn't." One brisk morning, he returned to her porch again, this time in uniform, with a folded document in hand. She looked up as he climbed the steps. "Well now," she smiled. "Didn't expect you this early." He handed her the paper. "The department's starting a community training initiative. They're naming it after you." She paused, unfolding it slowly. Her eyes scanned the heading, "The Morgan Method, Building Trust Through Presence and Respect." Below it, a seal. An official endorsement. And under that, a quote from her first lesson, "You learn before you command. You listen before you assume." She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at him. I didn't need my name on anything, she said. I know, he replied. But we did. For once, she looked surprised. Maybe even a little misty-eyed. He stepped back, gave a small nod, and turned to leave. Before he reached the steps, she called after him, Cole. Yes, ma'am. You've done good. He smiled. I had the best teacher. And as he walked down the path, past the trees glowing orange and gold, the neighborhood watched, not just a cop, but a man shaped by a moment, and a woman who refused to be silenced. The training program caught fire. Other departments across the state requested materials. Officers came from neighboring counties to sit in on sessions led by Ms. Eloise, now affectionately called Miss Morgan, by rookies who barely hid their nervousness when taking a seat on her porch. But she never raised her voice. Never demanded respect. She earned it, again and again, through quiet strength, piercing wisdom, and unshakable presence. One day, Officer Cole brought someone new with him. A fresh-faced recruit named Daniels, barely out of the academy. Nervous, too eager to impress. He stepped onto the porch, looked around, and before he could speak, Ms. Eloise raised a hand. First question, she said. Do you know the names of the people you serve? He blinked. Not yet, ma'am. Then you're not ready to serve them. The porch went quiet. Cole smiled faintly but didn't interfere. Daniel swallowed hard. Then what do I do? Ms. Eloise reached for the second chair. You sit. You listen. You learn. And he did. That porch became more than wood and nails. It became a classroom. A courtroom. A bridge. And long after Eloise Morgan would stop rocking in that chair, her 5 words would live on, echoed in roll call rooms, scribbled in notebooks, whispered during tense moments, I trained your police chief. But what she really trained, was a generation. Years later, long after Officer Cole had become Chief Cole, the neighborhood still spoke of her. The porch was quieter now. The old rocking chair sat still, its wood polished, cushion faded, yet respected like a monument. No one dared sit in it. On the anniversary of her passing, the department held a small ceremony. No TV cameras. No speeches for show. Just officers, some old, some new, gathered on that lawn as the sun dipped behind the trees. Chief Cole stepped up to the porch, holding a plaque. He knelt down, securing it carefully to the step where he once sat, unsure and embarrassed so many years before. The engraving read, Wisdom lives here. In memory of Eloise Morgan, the woman who taught us to listen. He stood, took a breath, and faced his team. Every badge here carries weight, he said, voice steady. But it's what you carry behind it that counts. She showed us that. This porch, this place, is where I learned to be more than a cop. I learned to be a servant of the people. Silence. Reverent. Powerful. Then one young officer, a woman just a year into service, raised her hand. Chief, what would she say if she saw us now? Cole looked at the rocking chair, a soft smile forming. She'd say, sit down. You still have a lot to learn. And with that, they left a single cup of tea on the side table. The chair stayed empty. Not out of loss. But out of deep, enduring respect.